This is Azbog, and we're going to talk about Battle for Azeroth and some of the data mining that's come out of it in relation to the Affliction spec. I'm just going to briefly say that they haven't really done anything to demonology. It's still a work in progress, as you can tell here. And I'm going to link this to the in the description below. Let's take a look at Affliction. I'll tell you kind of what I would build if I was playing this. And I'm building this for a Battlegrounds PvP spec, but I'm also going to talk about just some of the specs and things differently. So the first major change that we should recognize is that they are moving away from Draining Soul and more towards back to Shadow Bolt, from what I understand. But there's also a bunch of really cool changes, and I think there's one talent change in here which is actually going to make demonology pretty cool. They're going to probably completely rework demonology, which is a great sign. And there's also a good sign for destruction in here as well. So we have Shadow Embrace, which says if our Shadow Bolt applies Shadow Embrace, increasing your damage dealt to the target by 3% for 10 seconds, stacks up to 3 times. So it's a 9% buff. It lasts only for 10 seconds, which isn't very long. But we don't know how Shadow Bolt's going to work in the rotation and how good it is. There's a spell later on which makes our Shadow Bolt instant, so you could definitely build sort of like one of the specs I just built with demonology recently, which is more of a Shadow Bolt spec focus, instead of, which would be equivalent to Drain Life, to supplement your damage. Now the nice thing about Drain Life is it regenerates your HP back, but does a minimal amount of damage. So the question is are we trading off, is this a nerf to Affliction because we're losing a synergy of getting HP back, especially in Battlegrounds, compared to just doing straight damage maybe with a Shadow Bolt. The second one was Haunt. Does 100% spell power. Increase your damage dealt to the target by 12% for 12 seconds. So this already seems better than Shadowy Embrace, the talent I just talked about a second ago, right here. But the thing is that it has a 1.5 second cast, while this is just a passive ability. And then you have Death Bolt. Launches a bolt of death at the target, dealing 15% of the remaining damage to your damage over time effects on the target. That seems pretty good. It just costs 2% of base mana, but the problem is it has a 2-second cast timer. So I'm actually probably inclined to go with Shadow Embrace just because it's a passive ability. Haunt has a cooldown to it. It's single target, where Affliction is more multi-targeted to begin with. And Haunt has a 10-second cooldown, so you can only put it on one person at a time. If the person dies with it, though, it could execute them, so it can synergize with Death's Embrace down here. You have Wraith and Agony, which your Agony is just the same, up to 15 stacks. Absolute Corruption, same thing. And Life Tap, which is a little different. It's something new. So it grants 1 Soul Shard at the cost of 15% of your maximum HP. This is probably not that great, but it's probably a really good PvE thing, right? Because say you tap twice and you're getting healed by the healer and the raid or the party, you get 2 shards where you can cast those shards and do either Seed or Corruption damage. So it can basically give you infinite shards. It's really good for single boss fights where you can get healed. But remember, we're giving up our own personal healing, so Life Tap can be kind of dangerous. So it's changed Life Tap, and maybe Life Tap as a whole is changed. Maybe they've removed it as a base skill, because you can see sort of the base skills on the right, and I don't see it really here. So I think maybe they've removed Life Tap, which is a major nerf to Warlocks, especially Affliction Warlocks. But the reason why is you'd end up with Life Tap with Drain Soul. It essentially gives us infinite mana. So again, there has to be something to kind of make up for it. Let's just look through the list real quick. So in here's Shadow Bolt, by the way. It sends a shadowy bolt at an enemy, causing 50% of spell power shadow damage, 2% of base mana cost. There's our defensive tree at level 45. You have Demon Skin, Burning Rush, Dark Pack. So you have Demon Skin, which is just pretty good. 0.5% maximum health every 1 second, now absorbs up to 15% of maximum health. Pretty good. You have Burning Rush, which gives you minus 50% movement speed. You can only get snared at 100% of your normal movement speed. but you lose 4% of your health every second. So you can only do it for 20 seconds before you go to 0. So it's not really that great. Burning Rush has just never been that great. They never want Warlocks to have good mobility. That's just the conclusion, because of the dot damage that you do. You don't, you're just doing you don't need to have a way to get away from people, because your dots stick to somebody. It's not a high mobility class. Dark Pack is probably pretty good. Sacrifices 20% of your current health to shield you for 400% of the sacrificed health for 20 seconds. So this is actually pretty. Dark Pack here is pretty good. I think it's buffed up from the current version. Let's think about it. You have 5 million HP, and you're gonna have more HP, but let's use in context of where we're at in Legion. You have 5 million HP. You sacrifice 20%. Sacrifice 1 million to gain a 4 million shield for 20 seconds, and you can use it while CC'd. So it's a really good damage mitigator, probably more so than Demon Skin, if you think about it, where we constantly are regenerating 0.5% of our maximum HP every second, which is not that great, but it's a 15% HP buffer, right? And it absorbs up to 15%. This is going to give you a massive shield, right? Basically, you're going to lose 1 million HP, but the problem is like, okay, are we losing a lot of the healing of power that we had? So Seeds has been nerfed, so this affects the Nightfall PvP spec, which I just posted, which is a problem. So now instead of, it was originally 5, and then they buffed the damage, reduced it to 3. Now it's just going to go down to 2. You put 1 other seed on someone. So Seeds right now is really nerfed. So people are not probably going to use it. Again, certain skills that Blizzard puts out, they're so nerfed, like why use them? But I explained to somebody else, like the problem is they have to balance this game for PvE first, then probably Arena second, and then third Battlegrounds. So Phantom Singularity is still pretty good, still the same. And then Soul Harvest is increases your damage and pet damage by 20%, lasts 4 seconds. Increase 6 seconds for each target affected by your agony. So unless there's a way to put a lot of agonies on people, so agony lasts for 18 seconds, I think. We actually see the tooltip over here. 18 seconds. The problem is that agony, it doesn't give us enough time really it's okay. Like this used to be other PvPers did use Soul Harvest, and it did make their damage skyrocket. I think it's been nerfed to where people don't use it now, but it used to be really good. They would put agony on everyone, pop it, and then maybe reapply it, and they would use like Wraith and Agony. I just don't think it's that good. So our artifact gave us, the next tier is tier 75. Our artifact gave us really powerful health stones, basically a lay on hands. And if anybody else uses a health stone, it heals us as well, which is really nice. And a lot of players do use it. I've noticed that the animation goes off on us quite a bit, so it helps out the healing with us. But we might lose life tap. That could be a problem. Let's take a look just to double check. I mean, life tap's a level 30 skill, so I don't see it here, in here really. So I don't know if we've lost it, but that would be a problem. Instead of actually getting mana for life tapping, you just get soul shards. So you can't really have like the infinite mana that you would with Affliction. The Healthstone heals you for 30% of your maximum health over 6 seconds and makes your spells cast not delayed by taking damage. So you're still affected by pummels and interrupts. But what's really nice is this is like a very powerful healing over time effect. And we don't know the items and the artifacts and so forth that can combo with this spec, but just looking at this, again, we're just looking at this spec as base. This is a really good go-to. It doesn't give us the power of Mortal Coil to shuck off an opponent for 3 seconds and give us 20% HP, but it goes over 100%, so you'd use this like if you're at like maybe 60% HP and you knew you were taking a lot of damage. And we don't see the actual cooldown on this. I think it's just a modification It's level 75. So I don't see it right here. Let's see if we can find it on the right. Yeah, Great Hellstone. Hellstone can be summoned, 3-second cast. It doesn't tell us the cooldown. I think it's like a minute and a half cooldown though. But again, these things are works in progress. Demonic Circle is still the same. You have Nightfall, which they've taken out of the PvP section and put it in the PvE section, or the PvE side of things. And it's the same thing, but instead of giving you an instant Seed of Corruption, you get an instant Shadow Bolt. So one thing that might happen is that they might have like an area of effect Shadow Bolt to compensate for the Seed of Sow of Seeds exploding and putting corruption on everyone. I'm not sure. But it has a chance to deal damage, causing your next Shadow Bolt to be instant and deal 25% increased damage. So you could have really hard-hitting Shadow Bolts maybe. But then you have Death's Embrace, which is still the same. Shadow Bolt, you have Siphon Life, Seed of Corruption, Phantom Singularity, Shadow Bolt, and all your dots, Agony, Corruption, Unstable Affliction, deal 50% to increase damage for targets below 35%. So that's still really good. And that's like the go-to PvP spec, because it just does, again, percentages do a ton of damage. And then we have, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, then you have Grimoire of Sacrifice, huh? This is really cool. You sacrifice your pet. And this is like, I guess this is similar to the older specs. You sacrifice the pet, and you gain its Command Demon ability, and 15% increased damage done. It lasts 1 hour, too, as well, but I think it's bugged, so you have to, like in Battlegrounds, you have to keep resummoning and sacrificing your pet. Instead of doing just like spot fixed dot damage, it does a % increased damage done, which is really powerful. And before we go to the last tier, I want to talk about percentages. What makes this game, where it's hard to balance this game, is in the percentages. When, like, if you have a talent that says I want to increase your ability by a certain % or a fixed rate spell, like a spell damage is really done by your spell power, which is a fixed rate, and then you have things that can affect the percentage of that damage. You typically want to increase the % damage. Death's Embrace, however, is very powerful because if a target gets below 35%, and look at the last line, it says damage increase is higher against lower health targets. So even if they're lower than 35%, like basically the name of the spell is death, the name of the talent is Death's Embrace, and that's exactly what happened. You're like in a Saw movie, really. You know, you're just gonna get destroyed. Last tier, tier 100, level 100, Soul Conduit, 15% chance, 1 in 6 chance, every soul shard you get refunded. Always a go-to. I'm just gonna skip around Creeping Death because I want to tell you a Siphon Life, 30% healing, over 15% of the damage done over some X damage. And the highlight, Creeping Death. Your Agony, Corruption, and Unstable Affliction deal full damage 15% faster. So you have a 15% buff to your damage. Now, as I showed you guys with, this is definitely a buff. So this is, Creeping Death is definitely powerful. It's probably the go-to spec tier, talent in this tier. The issue is that, you know, if you have a way to refresh your dots, remember that they're damaging 15% faster. That's always really good. So if you're putting high damage on someone, it's really powerful. My overall thoughts before I end the video is we have some really cool options here. You know, if you want to just go like with Grimoire of Sacrifice, I think it would be really cool. I've selected some talents I think that are preliminarily kind of the go-to talents for Affliction. We have to see how Shadow Bolt is going to work into the rotation of Affliction. But overall, this is going to be a really exciting spec. I think it's going to be an exciting expansion. It's going to be fun to play. I'm really interested to see how they're going to resolve Demonology. Oh, by the way, this also works with Affliction and Destruction. So Destruction is going to have a major buff too. And the nice thing is you get the Command Demon ability out of this. So say you have a Fell Hunter, you sacrifice it, you get the Silence. Or the Succubus, you get to seduce someone. Powerful, very powerful. And it'll be interesting to see how this works with maybe Demonology. It doesn't say it's with Demonology yet, so Demonology is still being worked on. It needs a major rework of some kind, in my opinion. people didn't, other players I think did not like the summon fell hunter part as a major part of the damage. It became, the whole point behind building specs is you want to make it interesting. You want to be able to have players have multiple options, and you don't want to have, the more options and variety of playability within a single specialization is really good. And that's what makes World of Warcraft a great game. It makes it really unique because there's so many ways that you can play it. And then each class has 3 different ways they can play a class. And within those specializations, there's often multiple specializations. And then we have the PvP talents, which can also change the way your spec can be played as well. So this stuff came from data mining. Hopefully we'll get some more information, and I'll be able to update you all you Tarks on it in the future. Like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in the next video.